Picture this. You're trapped between a rock and a hard place. Behind you, danger closes in. In front of you, there's seemingly no escape. You turn left, right, up, or down. It's a dead end, all around. Have you ever been there? I mean, really been there. I'm not talking about a fender bender or missing the bus. I mean desperate, hopeless, hitting the floor and wondering why, kind of there. Well, today's story was exactly like that. And it wasn't just some random people in some random situation. It was God's people, His chosen nation, the children of Israel. And they were trapped between a Pharaoh's army and the giant sea with nowhere to go. And you won't believe what happened next. Because if they had only known, this would have been the greatest traffic jam of all time. Stick around, because the rest of the story could change your life. Let's dig in. In the Bible times, being an Egyptian was kind of like being an American. And for the most part, life was pretty sweet. That was until the Israelites showed up. See, they were basically slaves in Egypt, which Pharaoh wasn't too happy about. But after God laid down 10 pretty devastating plagues, He finally said, okay. So Moses, who was kind of like their Moses, led them out of Egypt, and all seemed well. Until Pharaoh changed his mind. Now, before you say, dude, don't whine, be grateful. These weren't your average Egyptians. These were God's chosen people. And God promised to make them into a great nation and take them to the promised land. So when Pharaoh chased them down, it was personal. It was God vs. Pharaoh. And we know how that goes. God was gonna win. But how? Well, let's find out. The Israelites were on the run from Pharaoh's elite fighting force. And after a whole day of running, they reached the Red Sea. But as they got closer, they realized it was an even bigger problem than they thought. First of all, it was a hot, sunny day, so the heat was intense. Second, it was a huge sea, like miles wide, so crossing it was impossible. And third, there was no bridge or anything, so there was simply no way across. But the Israelites had two options: stay and die, or risk everything. So they chose the latter. Now, I'm not saying the sea was calm. I mean, it was a big sea. The wind was blowing, waves were crashing. It was rough. But miraculously, they got all the way across. And that should have been the end of the story. But you see, God wasn't finished yet. As they stood on the other side of the sea looking back, they saw something unbelievable. Pharaoh's entire army was right behind them, blocking their only way out. It was a trap. The Israelites cried out to Moses, "Why are you doing this to us? Why did you bring us out of Egypt to die here by the sea? It would have been better to be slaves in Egypt than to die here." Now, I don't blame them. I mean, at this point, it looked like they were done, but Moses was different. He didn't panic. Instead, he stood up and declared, "Fear not. Stand still and watch the salvation of the Lord." And I love that. Watch the salvation of the Lord. We've watched these videos where people panic and scream, but Moses told them to be still and watch. So they waited. And then something crazy happened. God said to Moses, "Lift up your staff, stretch out your hand over the sea, and divide it." Now, to be clear, this wasn't the normal staff Moses used to part the sea. This was a new divine staff. It glowed with heavenly power. As Moses raised it, walls of water rose up and dry ground appeared, forming a pathway right through the middle of the sea. When everyone was safe, Moses raised his staff again. The walls of water came crashing down and Pharaoh's entire army was swallowed up. Not one soldier survived. God had won the battle. Now, if that's not a miracle, I don't know what is. And that's just one of many stories where God seemed to come out of nowhere to save his people. But here's the thing. God didn't just save the Israelites. He brought them through safely. He didn't just rescue them. He rescued them and set them free. There's a difference. And if you think about it, it makes sense. If God could save them once, he could do it again and again and again. Look at Exodus chapter 14, verse 13. Then Moses said to the people, "Stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you have seen today, you shall never see them again. The Lord will fight for you, and you shall hold your peace." Now, those are words to live by. So if you feel trapped, remember, God can and will make a way. But sometimes he doesn't just make a way. He turns a curse into a blessing, a threat into an opportunity, and a wall into a doorway. Sometimes the things that seem to block our way aren't walls, they're windows. Listen, when the Israelites left Egypt, they weren't headed to the sea. They were headed to the promised land, but God knew they needed a detour. They needed to go another way to appreciate how powerful he was. You see, they couldn't see what was ahead, but God knew the best route. He always does. He led them through the sea because he knew they needed to see him move. They couldn't trust their eyes. So he parted the sea to remind them who was in control. And when they looked back, they saw with their own eyes what God had done. They witnessed a mighty miracle. Now, I'm not suggesting that we should try to part seas in our lives. I'm suggesting that we should trust that God can do it. You see, we serve a God who specializes in impossible situations. A God who takes the weak and uses them to defeat the powerful. A God who turns curses into blessings, walls into windows, and threats into opportunities. I know bad things happen to good people. I know innocent people suffer. I know the world isn't fair. But here's the thing, God isn't done with us yet. He still has plans and purposes for us. And if he's taken us this far, he'll take us all the way. But it's not always easy. Sometimes we have to walk through fire to get there. And that's what the Israelites did. You see, the same God who parted the Red Sea is the same God who delivers us from impossible situations. He doesn't always do it the way we want, but he always does it perfectly. So if you're going through something right now that seems impossible, don't worry. God's already there. He's already working things out for you. You just need to trust Him. Trust His timing. Trust His plan. Trust His promises. Trust His heart. Trust His ways. Because He's not finished with you yet. He still has plans and purposes for you. So don't quit. Don't give up. Don't throw in the towel. Don't cash out. Don't settle for less. God's not done with you yet. He's got more for you. More victories. More miracles. More breakthroughs. More favor. More opportunities. So hang in there. Hold on tight to His word. Hold up your head high, because God's not done with you yet. You're just getting started. All right. Let's close with this. We may feel alone, helpless, forgotten, out of options, but we're not. God's with us. He's got us. He's got a plan. All we need to do is trust Him. And listen, when we do, we'll see miracles in our lives. We'll experience breakthroughs beyond anything we can imagine. We'll witness the power of God moving in our lives. Because when we trust God, we tap into His power. So don't give up. Don't give in. Don't give out. Hold on tight to God's promises. Hold up your head high, because God's not done with you yet. He's just getting started.